What's up, Auburn family? Welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we get together and we talk about what's going on in the world of the Auburn family spectrum. As always, we're always heavy on the Auburn sports here, but if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. And thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. We appreciate you being in here and hanging out with us, even on not so the best of times for Auburn football right now. Apologies for the little interruption there at the beginning of the whole intro process. As you can see, just like our football team, we are not firing on all cylinders here tonight, apparently, as I'm trying to do like 50,000 things all at once as we get the show started somewhat on time tonight. It's just not flowing in my favor. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Tonight, as has been the case for every single Monday night, we have been doing grades and a breakdown show of the previous game. Now, not going to be a fun one. In fact, I will bet that this one will turn more so into a therapy session, an extended therapy session that has been for the Auburn family over the last 3 days. So I kind of anticipate that already, but we're going to try our best to give the grades and go ahead and get it out of your system. F's all the way around. The grades are not going to be good, right? We all know that, but we're going to still talk about it and talk through it some and put this one to bed finally and just be done with it, because I think we're all ready to do that as the Auburn family. Tonight, though, unfortunately, I do not have my co-host. As you probably can tell by now, I've usually introduced him by now. Ben King was so distressed by what he saw, didn't want to be here. No, I'm kidding. Ben actually did want to be here. He has been out of town and actually planned to do this on the road. His schedule did not allow him to do so. So tonight, what we're going to do is a little bit different. It's just going to be mainly me, but I am going to give our Booster Club members the opportunity to join in. They have the link in the Booster Club Patreon app. So if you go over there and click in that, guys, you can come on in. Let me know if there's any problems with it, and we'll get you guys in if you'd like to. And you can stick around the whole time with me if you'd like. Other than that, it's just going to be me hanging out with you all and talking about the grades for this thing. And we're not grading coaches either. So just leave that up. We all know how everybody feels about the coaching right now. It is what it is. It's the way it's going to be. Right now, we're grading the players and their performances. Right now is our check-in period, as it always is for every single show, whether you're watching here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or you're watching on the replay. We'd love for you to check in at the start of the show. Let us know where you're watching from with your city, your state, and international if you're international. And be sure to smash that like button, the retweet button, all that stuff to let people know that you enjoyed the show, so they'll come in and check it out here on E2C Network. Watch out for the biting hogs. What the heck? I don't know what that's all about. Good to see you, Neil. Poor Eagle. What a predicament Auburn football is in. Yeah, it's quite a little bit of an interesting time that we're find ourselves in right now as a time. Therapy session has been around since 2013. Trey Mason owes us a national title. Wow. Predicted it. Let's move on. Done. Okay, I'll just sign off now. We'll be doing this. I mean, listen, I hope you guys will stick around for this, but yeah, I know it's a little bit frustrating to sit here and be doing this. Save your grades. I will ask for them when we're ready for them. No need to drop them in right now. Not necessary. Adamson, good to see you. Dusty here. All of our normal crew seems to be here tonight. How can you be from Jackson, Tennessee and Montgomery at the same time? Either way, we'll take you. Thanks for being here, Joe. And thank you for rejoining as a channel member. I just noticed that the other day. So good to have you here. All right. So if you are a Booster Club member, if you'd like to call into the show, please do allow, everybody the opportunity to get in there too. But, come on in if you'd like to, and we'll keep you on as long as we can or the whole time to join in on the fun. And we'll just have some fun with this show as much as we can tonight. And we'll maybe take some other comments and questions, because I don't know that we're going to spend an exorbitant amount of time diving into the grade in this, because we mostly all know how this went. Overall, I don't think it's any shock that the grades will be low tonight. I do think there will be a lot of Fs. I think there's also some opportunities for some shout outs and good things that were done. But yeah, we're going to try to do that as much as we can tonight, is try to find any good that we can in a very bad situation overall. I think one of the big things that I've noticed online is a lot of people, and here on our channel too, is people wanting us to make sure we also are not forgetting about how bad the defense played. The obvious thing and the easy thing to pick on is the offense, right? I mean, it's the thing that everybody has been watching, seeing if it was going to get going, and it didn't. But the defense had just as much of a hand in how hard that handling of that game was going to be. I know we've got people misbehaving in the chat, but anyway. Thomas says this was a rough game, but it ain't the end of the world. We've been here before, y'all. The sad thing is, Thomas, we have been here before. Yes, we have actually, and I would like to say that that's not the truth. Feinbaum said yesterday Auburn cannot win with who? Without Kiffin? Auburn can win without or with anybody. They don't have. There's not like this magic bullet that Auburn has to have to win. Just have to give enough time. Owen Papo is the highlight of the game, so he's the player of the week, in my opinion. We were going to get there. I think he's definitely one of the highlights there. Neil says, I have flashbacks of 2012, and then 13 happened, and I was happy again. Well, see, always remember that. It seems like every time things take a nosedive, they come right back up. Hasn't really happened yet, but this has been the longest kind of, rebounding of an Auburn program in quite some time. So here's what we're going to do tonight. In the interest of kind of just getting through this one, we usually stay on an hour, and we're going to probably do that tonight, but I know that the mood is not super exciting for that. Tell about the press conference, Stuntman. The press conference is up. My press conference video and comments on it will be going live right after this, so stay tuned for that. So unfortunately, I am going to get you to wait a little bit longer, so you can hang around here, and I'm sure there will be some questions about that throughout this tonight, but I want you guys to obviously go check out the commentary of that afterwards. Probably the majority of you will not be happy with my response because the popular narrative is to dogpile on top of Coach Harsin right now, and that is not what I will be doing in that. Do you think there will be a position coach firing coming soon? If you mean soon by this week, I think that time is past. That would have happened, I think, on Sunday after their evaluation period. So soon, meaning in the next coming weeks. Yeah, if things continue to get bad, Coach Harsin has shown that he will definitely make a change if it is needed. I don't necessarily know where you would make the change, though, right now. All right, let's see here. Can anybody tell me our identity on offense is? Yes, our identity on offense is not having an offensive line that can block, and that is it. And I hate that. I say this 1,000 times. I hate having to talk so poorly about a group of individuals that have worked so hard, that put in the effort, and they're just not getting it right. They're just not, and it just isn't working out. I don't really know how to salvage the situation for them in the way I can speak about it. It's just not working out. So the identity comes from being able to establish a run game. That doesn't happen. The identity becomes be able to protect your quarterback, who's already been struggling in some sense in both facets, both guys, and they still haven't been able to do that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start there. Let's start with the offensive line and talk about them, because I think if we're all being honest here, did we really just get a commitment live? Did that really just happen, Leighton? Don't mess with me. How many times, folks, have we gone live here at E2C Network and something like this has happened? Don't mess with me. I gotta look at this now. Hold on, everybody. We got to go check this out. Can anybody confirm that just happened live? I'm trying to log in right now. This does not make for great show, but we're going to do that. Maybe Thomas knows. Thomas is here, one of our Booster Club members. Thomas, can you confirm that for me, sir?
No, that is brand new news to me, but I'm tempted to grab another electronic device and start typing. I bet he's going to beat me to it, though.
I'm looking at it right now. It looks like there might be some celebrating from. Yes, there it is. Will Friend is celebrating. So there you go. It looks like it is true.
Good.
So here we are starting off this show in a very sad note and being all down in the dumps about things. And yet we have something to celebrate. So there you go, folks, watching live on each. This is why you come to the live show, for the terrible way to start the show, but also for great things happening live, or just breaking news in general. So anyway, Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here this evening. War Eagle, everybody.
Thomas, you want to stick around the whole time?
Sure, why not?
All right. Well, and anybody else in the Booster Club, feel free to join in. Just because he's on here, we can add more people, and I think up to 4 people. So feel free to call in if you'd like to be part of the conversation tonight. So we'll talk a little bit about him. I will obviously be putting a video out about him as soon as I can get off here. Just add it to the list of things I got to get done in the first 2 days after a game day weekend. But that'll be coming out as soon as I can get to that. Grading the offensive line. I think it is important that we do that first because it affected so many facets of the offense. And we can't have a well-rounded conversation about quarterbacks, about running backs, and even wide receivers without addressing this. Is there any shining light for the offensive line in this game that I'm missing, Thomas?
I have only watched the game live. I have not gone back and rewatched it and really dove into it. But from what I was looking at, they were presented with a completely manageable defensive front and a defensive scheme. They were coming one way or another. And it was a sieve. They came through at every point of attack multiple times during the game. Our feet were either stagnant or going backwards. A lot of reaching, and what I mean with reaching is you're not in a position to block this guy, and you're reaching to hopefully get to him. Our footwork was just embarrassing to me. Tate Johnson just got drug around like a small kid, and I'm not trying to be mean, but watching some of the positions he was in, and he wasn't always in the worst of spots to make a block, but those guys just beat him up, and they beat up our big guys, and they just beat up our offensive line, and they beat up on the tight ends and blocking as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. I'm glad that we don't want to shy away from the fact that, Piers, Tate Johnson got pushed around a little bit, but so did the big guys. So for those of you that want to live and die by the argument that he's small, he can't be a good offensive lineman, that's not true. The big guys are getting pushed around just as much as that. But yes, I'm sure that Tate faces an uphill battle that he has to compensate for with very sound fundamentals. And, just knowing exactly what he's supposed to do. So that doesn't become a detriment to him. And apparently it may have in this game. I can't figure out something good to say about this game. I mean, I'm really trying. I'm really trying to figure out something for the offensive line that I can say. But is there any other grade other than F than we can give them?
No, there's not. And I'll answer Dusty's question because it's a really good one. It's been 20 months of working with a new coaching staff, new strength and conditioning, and the fundamentals are not there. Mm-hmm. You can add all the size and strength you want, but the fundamental footwork and hand placement, something I've said 1,000 times and will always say, is that those fundamentals are not there. They can be there in practice all they want to be, but that's repetition against the same group of guys. Every human being walks and talks a little bit differently. The first 2 games were a perfect opportunity to get that tuned up, tuned in, and frankly locked in to a manageable starting 5 offensive line and tight ends and blocking schemes that could make us successful. Right. There have been a couple of plays over 3 games that they have successfully opened up a running lane inside the tackle specifically, that they've been able to get downfield to the second level to continue their blocking. And if you're not moving your feet, you can't get anywhere. If you're standing still, you might as well be pond water because pond water don't move. And that's what it looks like. And it frustrates me to no end and I don't know if it's a lack of fundamentals just because that's how you were coached for so long. If the scouting and recruiting was not up to par, they were recruited for a very specific type of offense under a different staff. I get it, but if you can't take any steps forward, there's a problem. I don't know if that's coaching or I don't know if that's just the players. And I'm not going to put blame on one side or the other because it's a team and you're a unit. So if there's not going to be any improvement, we're going to have a serious problem. And like you said, everything starts with the offensive and defensive lines. You can try to tell me I'm wrong, but I'm just going to tell you you're wrong too because it does. And if they're not up to par, there's nothing else that's going to go right. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's no way to slice it. I mean, we only had 119 yards net rushing. We had 6 sacks on the day. We had 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. The first fumble was TJ, right, that we lost. And then what was the second fumble? I can't remember. You got
Cedric Jackson.
That's
Fumble.
right.
Pass.
So we can cover that in a second when we get to wide receivers. But just in terms of when you look at protection, creating run lanes, protecting the quarterback, F. It starts there. It's the lowest you can absolutely give it. So
I'm actually going to change my grade from F to U for unsatisfactory.
But see, when you normally go by that scale though in school, that's one of those classes where you can't get a letter grade. So it's almost like
PE.
It's easier. We'll give it as people were saying Z and all that stuff in there. Yeah, it's bad. It's not even worth grading, to be honest with you. And again, I hate saying that about our guys, but it's just the facts. So I'm sure we'll come back to that. Several points of conversation. Let's move on. Quarterbacks is probably the next area we need to cover. 2 different quarterbacks played the game. TJ had some great moments where he literally kept the offense on the field when they shouldn't have been. I think we need to say that at the very start. He also had some same mistakes. Do you consider the interception his fault or his offensive line's fault? Because the pressure came from the back.
Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. I'm gonna blame it on him, and before anything jumps down my throat, because clearly he was scrambling, but we watched that for a while. And sometimes if nobody's blocking for you, you're gonna start to see ghosts, and you're gonna move where you shouldn't be moving. But the offensive line, if you miss your block, you're hollering at the guy going, hey, 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 or you're yelling his name. You're yelling you may be yelling red, 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 which lets him know something's wrong. Get rid of the ball. And he desperately wants to make a play so bad, and I think that affects a lot of his vision, his ability to read the field. He can throw it 40 yards on a frozen rope, and we've seen it. And he made some of those throws in the Penn State game that were great throws, but the guy was open as well. There's a lot of times he will try to force it in there, and that's not good. So I'm going to put that interception on him. He should have thrown that ball away.
Okay.
Or just tucked it and just took off and prayed for the best.
And what about the fumble too from the backside? Would you count that against him or offensive line?
Ball security, ball security, ball security.
Even if he's coming back this way, even if he's getting ready to throw and he gets hit?
I'll give that one to the offensive line. But, man, he's 6'7". He's got, like, the largest hands on the team. How are you not going to hang on?
That is fair. And
again, I think a lot of times he saw some ghosts, but he also had guys right in his face and coming up on his backside that he had nowhere. What was he supposed to do?
Right. Yeah. Either way, not a great performance. Whether you put that one of those 2 instances on someone else other than him, you're still the leader. The responsibility falls on you, just like everything trickles down to the head coach on offense, and in some ways the team, effectively the quarterback. It all trickles down back on top of him. Because of the situation you put your defense in sometimes. Same goes for Robbie. Robbie, didn't get a chance to really show his speed a whole lot in this game. He did get 51, 22. Wait, hold on, I'm trying to read it right here. 51 yards total on 11 rushes. And, his interceptions that he has had in this season have been very frustrating. Same thing in this game. I'm trying to be a little bit more fair to him because he's had less opportunities to work with, but still his performance was not great either. Yeah. I guess my biggest question to you is, when you consider the performance of both, is there something that salvages it other than an F, or is this like a D-? Like, what do you, when you look at this and try to grade it, what do you think?
I don't dislike everything that Ashford did. I think he did make some good plays. I think he gives different opportunities for plays, but he also is a baseball guy. So his throwing motion is different than a traditional quarterback. It's more of a baseball style throw. And that affects your footwork because your footwork is different. Mm-hmm. So tendencies, they can be worked on, but I don't think he's come far enough that he's the answer at this point. I can't really grade the quarterbacks higher than maybe a D- at best, because there were some good decisions made.
Yep.
And then let's factor in that they had zero help from their blockers.
Right. I think the only thing that keeps them from being an F is because of the plays that TJ made a lot, which were, I think, again, we got to give him credit where credit is due. But again, it was so bad in so many areas on just on the things that they can control alone, that it can't be any higher than a D- probably, honestly. Maybe someone out there can make a case for a D, but I don't even think really anybody's willing to make that case right now. Just to kind of wrap up our quarterback discussion, I said this on the post-game show and, the reaction show. And usually that's just kind of, initial reactions and trying to think things through from what we initially are feeling after the game. And I'm kind of sitting on 2 days of thinking about it. And I think I stand by what I say. I said at the end of that game, I don't think TJ is our quarterback, and that has very little to do with what he is capable of doing. I think that has more to do so with what is there to assist him in the skill set that he has. I don't think our offensive line is the offensive line he can be most successful with.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. We've played 3 games. We've had 1 real test, and the other 2 pick-me-ups were not that impressive either from a run blocking and pass blocking standpoint. I gotta agree 100% with you. I really do.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that puts us in and the coaches make the final decision. So they said there was no change in depth or anything today. So we'll find out if that holds throughout the week of practice. And if Robbie, because the rumor is that, TJ and Robbie are both dinged up a little bit now, throwing that a supposedly dinged up Zach Calzada. What does that leave? Holden? Does Holden want to even be a part of this mess right now?
I've heard rumors of the Calzada being banged up, but just me personally, I haven't heard anything that corroborates it 100%.
Exactly.
I've said, okay, well, can you give me 100% proof?
Right.
Well, I'm going, all right. That'll kind of lead me into the point that the other thing I'm hearing, there's a high probability that we see number 10 at quarterback.
I didn't honestly think, I shouldn't say that. When I started this season and said how awesome is that we have 4 capable options at quarterback based on what we've seen about all of them, I didn't think we'd get to see all 4 of them. and here we are.
That's you. I never, if you have multiple quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback, is the saying. And we're kind of in that spot. Like, there's been a lot more time for people to kind of get into the system. There were very slight rumblings early last week that he could have gotten in, and then there was some talk about it after the game of,
Right.
We thought about it, but we didn't want to do that. And then look, I get it from a coaching standpoint. I get it. You don't want to play 3 quarterbacks. You don't want to put your third guy in the third quarter and go, please help. It looks awful. You ride it out with somebody. TJ's been benched twice this year already. He got benched at Mercer for a while, and he got benched this week. So I can see him being a number 2 all the way this year, but I don't see him being number 1. I think it's likely that depending on what the blocking can do, it's probably Ashford because of mobility. Mm-hmm. And I think that will shift us away from a pass heavy offense,
which is what people want.
Yeah. Based on, everybody watched LSU in 2019 and went, why aren't we doing that? Well, we didn't have the same guys. We don't. Right. They had their right tackle, Grant Deculus, was in like his 87th year of college eligibility. So, he probably had grandkids by the time the national championship game was played, but they had seniority across the board. So that's different. We're not going to see that here. Plus, the blocking's different. The coordinators are different.
Yep.
But I'm interested to see if Calzada gets in there, if they can block him.
That's the big question, isn't it? Speaking of blocking for him, running backs. Tank Bigsby. Only 39 yards on the day for him. I had that wrong earlier. Robbie only had 59 because he lost 22. Or excuse me, he had 29 net yards as part of that run game. TJ had 21, and that's probably one of the brighter spots of the running game was TJ actually using his feet and creating something out of that. Jarquez only 16 yards total for him. They ran Shedrick Jackson on a sweep, I guess is what it was. I can't remember, which was interesting. It got 12 yards. So, hey, listen, we couldn't, beggars can't be choosers at that point in the game. Running game was not impressive at all. Again, the question becomes, and you guys please offer your grades for the running backs now. Is it on the offensive line and the quarterback play, or is it still more so on them? I think this is one of the areas personally that you can't put a lot of blame on them, especially because the big story is, and the big, question everybody's asking, why was Tank not utilized as much as people wanted him? Only 9 carries. Yeah. To me, that says something else was going on other than just the game wasn't going the way we wanted, which I buy that response. I do. I buy the response from coach. The game was, we were in a position we needed to throw to get back in it. And unfortunately, that's not something we do well right now. But you still question only 9 carries. Something's up there. So I guess before we grade the running backs, thoughts on that?
If you can't run anywhere because nobody's blocking for you, there's no point in running it 30 times a game because it's just going to be another negative play. The times he was able to get loose in any fashion, he did well. But we're also not talking about a bruiser of a running back. You saw him when he caught a pass in space right before halftime. He took off. It was awesome. That he needs to be in space. He is not always going to be a bang it in between the guards runner, especially if nobody's blocking for him. I think Jarquez is a little more durable in that. But again, if you got nowhere to go, how can we blame? How can we blame him?
Right. Yeah. I still kind of go back to some of these situations where I've seen Tank do better. Even the limited Tanks, and someone, I forget who it was, I have to scroll back up to find it, but saying you can't really grade effectively for that limited amount of touches, considering what we know Tank normally can and should get. Jarquez only got 5 touches. This is one of those areas I wish I could give an incomplete because, you just wish that there was more of a body of work to assess how the rest of the game would have gone if we had concentrated more on the run game. I mean, what do you think? What would you grade it?
I'm going to give it a strong C, but not a C plus. If nobody's blocking and there's 3 or 4 guys able to tackle you as soon as you touch the football, that's not your fault. Where are you going to go?
Right.
If there's no option, you have no option.
I'm going to say C minus, and not because for any reason other than the whole offense has just got me in the down right now. Again, we've already acknowledged it. It's hard to work with what they were all being presented with in that game in terms of protection, run blocking, all that kind of stuff. But it is what it is. Wide receivers. Let's see how many people got catches here. We got Javaris again, pretty much was the leader. He did not lead in yards. That was actually Shedrick Jackson. But your 2 probably most experienced guys continue to lead the way at the top of the stats, whether that be in yardage or catches. So that's good. Shed, his big problem was the fumble. From my vantage point in the stadium and the replay on the screen, it looked like it was just a great play on the 2 guys that tackled him to knock it out. It's still on you for ball security, though, right? And you're a senior, or you're a 5th-year senior. So those things shouldn't be happening. Sometimes people just make great plays. So I find it as one of those situations where it's kind of a combo of the 2. Shouldn't happen on a guy like you, but sometimes you understand great plays are just made. Still a negative. You still have to use it against him, right? Tank was involved. Jarquez obviously was the only passing touchdown. It was only the 2nd passing touchdown of the year, right? Is that correct, or am I wrong on that? That's
we don't have enough
to question that. Malcolm Johnson Jr. got 4 targets, 2 catches on the day. Landon King, how about that catch, though? That was one of the bright spots. Was that not amazing to see him go up and get that one?
that was great. Like we said, TJ can throw it on a frozen rope if he's got to. Like he can get the ball to them when they're sometimes open. But that was, man, Landon King is a special athlete. Like that was a hard ball to go up, get, secure, and get down with. The guy was all over him. That was a excellent play by Landon King.
It was one of those moments where I was like, wait a minute, Auburn wide receivers haven't typically done that. So who is that? I had to remember that we've had a guy like Landon King. So I was, when I saw that happen too, and let's remember, this is a point in the game too, where that happens, where we're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. And we start knocking down plays like that. I think that was probably the drive where TJ, obviously that's his throw too, but also made a couple other plays too. And it kind of felt like, all right, yeah, we keep making this harder on ourselves, but we're starting to kind of make some plays. And then it's just like the air was let out of the balloon at some point. So when you try to grade wide receivers, we've got the fumble on Shed. We've got the great play by Landon King thrown in there. They distributed the ball around well. DeZalen Warsham even got on it. Damari Alston got a throw. Shanker got a throw in there as well, or at least these are targets and stuff like that. But they tried to get it to multiple guys, spread it around, and mainly that's because we went away from the rush attack so much. So how do you grade wide receivers?
I'm going to give them a C, and that's for two very different reasons. Route running was not awful, in my opinion. I think there was a lack of effort in some of those because they didn't seem to really want it as bad as I thought they should. And again, that's my opinion. I'm not a receiver at Auburn University. The other reason I can't go any higher than a C is blocking. Is receivers are part of a blocking scheme. We've got Shed, that's a pretty good sized guy that can block a defensive back. Our other starting receivers, and the majority of them, are not the biggest of dudes. So if they happen to have to block a big safety, they're going to lose. They're not big enough. You can't put a 165, 169-pound receiver that's 5'10" on a safety that's 6'2", 190. It's not going to work. Or a cornerback 6 foot and 200 pounds or 180, even 185 pounds. They're giving up 20, 30 pounds to everybody they're blocking, and it's not working.
Right.
It's not.
It's not. So yeah, as much as we, get on the offensive line for not creating much of a support in the run game, you got to obviously do a little bit with the wide receivers there as well. I find a similar situation here with trying to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because of everything else that was not going wrong or going right. Everything was going wrong with offensive line, quarterbacks, that kind of thing. But I think you're right. Somewhere in the C+ maybe range, because there were some good moments, making plays, making catches when we had to, but there were also some bad decisions and bad things that were happening at times. So offensively, even though we gave some C's there, can you justify giving this offense anything other than an F?
No, not when you factor in tight ends and you give them a D- or maybe an F+. So yeah, overall the offensive performance for Penn State is a solid F for me.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess if we have to grade it, you can add all the A's and B's you want to, but if there's a complete and total incomplete or unsatisfactory for the line, it brings the whole thing down.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because there's this, I forget who pulled up the image, but like they showed some of the team stats side by side. I don't know if you saw this circulating around. You maybe know what I'm referencing. And I think maybe it was Zach Blackerby who posted or something, but he said, tell me the score of this game based on these stats. And you see, if you get all the way to the bottom, obviously you see the discrepancy in turnovers, but you look at everything else and it's like, well, this should be at least competitive. And so that's the weird thing about this is a game where Auburn was making plays that it could have kept itself somewhat in the game, putting some stats up, but then just biting itself in the butt with these turnovers over and over and over again. And that's really the story of this game. The offense not doing its job, taking care of the ball, and frankly, putting the defense in some bad situations. But let's talk about defense. Where would you like to pick your poison?
Oh gosh, the lack of creation of turnovers to start with.
Yes. Now let's give credit where credit was due. We did force one fumble. It just didn't complete the job.
Yeah. But defensive line, give me a C minus.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I watched it and I was left wanting. I was wanting more that I didn't get. And again, I don't think it's from a talent perspective. I think it's from a scheme perspective. I understand you're trying to get your best guys out there, but I think a little bit more movement and a little bit more a pressure would be nice. And let's maybe play with a third linebacker every once in a while and see what happens here.
I do miss the days of three linebackers. I like having Iku and Derek out there on the edges a little bit. But when you're looking at this defensive line unit right now, throwing the edges in there is kind of that hybrid situation with what we're running right now. There's no sacks still. You talk about not creating turnovers, but there was not a lot of urgency other than that first couple of drives where we really got maybe some pressure, started making some plays, holistically as a defense. Yes. But, it felt like outside of that first quarter, things just kind of kept going down. So yeah, no sacks for the guys whatsoever, which is just shocking. I'm trying to pull up the total tackles for us. So Iku had 5 total tackles. Colby Wooden had 5. Derek Hall had 5. Jason Jones had 3, and Marcus Harris had 2. Marquise Robinson had 1. I did notice again Marcus Harris getting through the line as we've seen him do, and he actually did make a play this time, tripped the guy up, and before he even got back to the line of scrimmage. And that was, I remember thinking about that moment and saying, okay, those are one of the things I was wanting to see, is this interior defensive line starting to make a little bit more of a difference. It just didn't happen enough. Yeah. What was your grade again on defensive line?
C minus.
I kind of want to give him a D plus, just because of I expected so much more out of them in this game. I literally thought this was going to be the moment where Derek Hall, Iku Leota just embarrassed some of the offensive line, the tackles especially, of Penn State. And they grow them big in Penn State. We talked to our Penn State friend this past week, and we complimented them and know they can get them boys in there and feed them up right and make them big. But I just thought that was going to be. So really for me, the D really comes from the lack of production and how much more I expected of them. And it just didn't happen. Let's finish out front 7. Still not all that fun to talk about. The linebackers, just kind of my feelings on the situation. I don't think they did super well, but I think they're probably one of the better units, maybe. But also on the same token, they're one of those units that if you're not really talking about them, is that really a good thing? The big thing we've already addressed, Owen Papo, with forcing that fumble, just literally laid that man horizontal. We've all seen the picture by Todd Van Amps. Just, whew. I mean, think about how much that would have been replayed. That would have been the headline image had we won, or even if it had been a close game, like that would have you just seen Clifford like that on the front page of every newspaper.
Yeah, that was almost as good as Brett Edens on Jamarcus Russell in 2004. That was one of those iconic Auburn hits right there. And he went right up to Sean Clifford and took his lunch money and kissed his sister and walked off.
But I've watched that a couple times, and I'm not even convinced he meant to hit him that hard. Like, it just felt like he kind of ran up routinely and just hit him like he normally would. And maybe that's just, I looked at it too many times because it was the one good play, one of the few good plays we had in this game to look at. So I had to find some kind of joy in my life. And I'm like, did that look just too easy for him? I don't know that Sean Clifford was prepared to get rocked by Owen Papo.
That's game speed, though. That's the game just started. Let's go. I'm ready to hit somebody. That's exactly what it looks like. Right. And it's not fun to be on the receiving end of it, but it sure feels good to be giving those out.
Right. Looking at how some stats shake out here, Owen Papo leads with 6 tackles. Right behind him, Cam Riley starting to kind of come back up from his, very quick start against Mercer, where he had 13 tackles. So he's kind of moving back up towards there. We already talked a little bit about the edge rushers. Wesley Steiner had 3. I think one area, they were getting a few too many passes over the middle. Some of those were deep over the middle, so that falls into your secondary. But still, there's some coverage elements there that could have been a little bit better from the linebackers. When you look at your grade for linebackers, what do you say?
I'm going to give it a B-. And that's on all the linebackers that played. That's okay. Wesley Steiner was in there a good bit. I'm not just going to grade Owen Papo and Cam Riley. We did rotate at linebacker a little bit. And yeah, I'll go with that. Overall, they did some good things. They need to be in better placement, and some of that is coaching. If you're playing 2 guys on the inside and they go off tackle, that's a long stretch to get to. So yeah. I'll give them the credit for that in the run game. They got lost a little bit in coverage. They kind of get lost in a large grouping of guys when they were running downhill. But I would love to chastise Wesley Steiner. He had that tight end dead to rights and never wrapped up on him, and he turned it into a huge play. If you're going to come in like a scalded dog and hit somebody, wrap them up, put them in, please.
Yeah, I cannot stand plays where you've got the guy dead to rights, like you said, and just let him free.
And just running into somebody violently is not a tackle.
Owen Papo can do that, but I'm just kidding. It's for everybody. Fundamentals are important for everybody, no matter how talented you are. But yeah, I think honestly, the more we talk about it, they're probably the best group out of the offense and the defense. And still, there's much to be desired there. And not even that B can, I think, really help a lot of the perspective of the defense. Defensive backs. When you look at some stats here, DJ James is probably the highlight, meaning he just shows up in the stats the most. 5, he had a couple of pass breakups as well. In fact, he had 2 of the only 3 that we officially had there. Keontae Scott with 4 tackles, Zion Puckett with 3, Caden Bridges, nice to see him in there a little bit more, 3, Donovan Kaufman 3, Nehemiah Pritchett 3, Jalen Simpson 2. And then JD Rim as well got in there with 1 total tackle. Scrolling back up to look at some of the stats in terms of their passing, Sean Clifford was 14 for 19 with 178 yards, a long of 34 on his throw. Now, I think you'll recall, we talked about this with our Penn State friend this past week, that I said that if Sean Clifford has 3 incompletions again, y'all are going to win handily. He had 5 incompletions. Clearly, it's 3 to 5 incompletions means you're going to win easily. A lot of that comes from the lack of pass rush. But, in terms of when you think of the defense against passing, you think of your safeties, you think of your cornerbacks, your nickel backs, however you want to think about it. Outside of DJ James, there's not really much that sticks out to me other than them making some, throws that they probably shouldn't have. Anything, thoughts about defensive backs?
I'll grade them a D- overall. Passing was a little bit better than, honestly, I was really hoping that they were going to play the pass that well and hold him under 200 yards. That was like a little personal goal of mine, is if we can keep him for throwing for 200 yards, I feel good. But if they're running it, and they keep running it, and our defensive backs are having to catch a true freshman running back and bring him down, that's not a good look, man. Yeah, I can't give you a D+. It's got to be a D-. I can't get you into the C's at all.
Yeah, right.
But there's more to it than just passing. Like you're a defensive player, and it was not there for the DBs, and we played a ton of them.
Yeah. I don't really have much that I can contribute other than, DJ James at times just being, sticking out a little bit more in this game. I just expected a lot, but that's really the theme of this entire game is I just expected more. And I think that's why it's so frustrating. Not just because we're going off of 2 games, what we said, a lot of these guys have been around here. And listen, in the context of everything, this is 1 game. Everybody's having a field day right now with being negative and being upset, and rightfully so in some respects. But it is just one game. We got to see what the rest of the season shakes out. But right now, they haven't given us a lot of reason to be positive about it, right?
Yeah. They have not shown us anything, and yet you blame the team, but it's hard to blame them at the same time because we love them so much. But us as fans have not seen anything this year that gives us hope that this is going to get exponentially better in a very short amount of time.
Right.
So I don't want a rebuilding year. I don't want a long, drawn out struggle year. But right now, that's what it looks like. But I'm going to believe that they can get better. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yep.
But I'm not going to mope and drag myself around and go, "Woe is Auburn," because that's not me.
Right.
War Eagle all day, buddy.
Yep. To finish out our grades of the defense as a whole, though, we talked a lot about the few highs of the offense couldn't save it from an F. Yeah. Defensively, how do you justify all that? How do you grade them out as a defense?
C-.
Really? I think that's kind of generous.
There were enough bright spots that we've got all the talent there. They're just not in the right place.
Right.
So I'll grade it that based on that. But if this doesn't improve against Missouri, it's going to go down a lot faster than I want it to.
Right. I would say it's probably a D+ for me. Again, it just comes from, and maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the problem's me. But my grades tonight are really based off of expectations that were not met. I was not kidding myself to think that we might lose to Penn State. I just didn't think it'd be this way. Real quick, not that it's going to be a salve on the wound that is the Penn State game for us. Special teams wise, I think the main bad thing was the shanked punt by Oscar Chapman, but he still did pretty well overall. He had 3 punts, total of 126 yards, 42 average with a long of 46. Anders Carlson made both of his field goals. We didn't really have any good punt returns, or not that we made them punt a whole lot. I think it was only 3 times they punted, yes, and we had plenty of opportunities to do the kickoffs, but those didn't really work out. So when I look at special teams, this is kind of, again, probably is clearly the best unit overall, but that's not saying much in a game like this. I'm gonna give them a B+.
Yeah, I'll agree with the B+. Absolutely. Could have been an A+, but, Carson would have had to kick about 9 more field goals. And I'm so tired of kicking field goals.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was sitting with people I didn't know as well this time around. And the moment we went down there, I kind of just quietly just said to the person next to me, even though they probably weren't listening, I said, if we do not score this touchdown right here, we're going to lose this game, because this offense needs to see that we can finish this. And look what happened. And you cannot go down there time and time again and not finish. Field goals every once in a while are great. You need to take them when it's appropriate, but you have got to finish the game. You have got to be able to when you're at home, you have got to be able to establish the tempo. And they did that on the opening drive. Penn State fans were respecting Auburn and realizing the hype of being in Jordan-Hare from the kickoff in that first series for Penn State's offense. And when we started marching down there, you could even see some of them going, well, okay, this might actually be real. And then it happened again. And then nothing after that. But when you are at home, take advantage of what you have there.
Yeah.
It's disappointing. In my reoccurring theme, I expected so much more. Is all that it really comes down to. Being a fly on the wall this week should be something to see. Absolutely. It will be interesting. Insert jokes about we're not in the meetings and stuff like that. That's everybody's favorite joke today. So go ahead and get them out. Everybody's got little catchy one-liners on social media. So I'll take some comments and questions. You can obviously stick around if you'd like to, Thomas. Any other commentary that you'd like to make about what we got going on here? Let's see. Why do we think top recruits are not considering Auburn? Legit question. Thoughts?
Well, you have to have wins to get recruits because winning fixes everything. We don't have a resume of wins or stability at this point because there was the way that it ended with the Malzahn era and then the way the Harsin era started. And now it's being talked about again. There's been no peace on the plains since Malzahn got fired. There really hasn't. So
right.
As much as I want to, put on my orange and blue glasses, if you're a high school student that's looking at where you're going to go to college and play, you want somewhere that you have the opportunity to play that suits your skill set and that has stability. You take a scholarship to a smaller school if you're not going to get any scholarships. But if you've got the opportunity to go to pretty much any D1 school in the country, there's not a lot of reason to look at Auburn right now, but Auburn does sell itself. But if you're looking for stability and longevity and the resume of wins, we don't have that right now at all.
Now, and I 100% agree with what you said there, but I'm also going to take, you know me, you've been here long enough to know I like to play the opposite side of that. There's this perspective, and who was it that asked the question? So I get all hydraulics. I'm not saying that you are this way, but this is just the typical response that you hear a lot of the times. The top recruits, stars don't matter, folks. They matter in certain aspects that usually 4 stars are pretty good, but there's a lot of 5-star bust. Stars do not matter. So the top recruits is who you need, who actually can come here and be coached. Tommy Tuberville was the king of turning 2 stars into 6 stars. I miss those days. I really do. But you have to change your thinking on this a little bit. Top recruits are what you think of them. If you're going to focus on stars, then of course you're not going to think that the top recruits are considering Auburn. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the ones that truly are the top recruits, whether they're 5 stars or 3 stars, are considering Auburn. They're probably really thinking hard. Unless Auburn offers me something really outside of what they're putting on the field right now, which you've addressed that they do. Auburn sells itself. Then you gotta really hope that's your best sales pitch. Because right now we're not putting the product on the field that I would want to be a part of at this moment.
And you got to look at it. I mean, we can want it all we want to, but look at it from the perspective of a high school junior, senior, maybe even sophomore that's getting offers from every D1 school in the country. Like if you get an offer from, I don't know, I'm not going to be mean, but UTEP, and you get an offer from Auburn, you're going to look at them a little differently.
Right.
If you get an offer from Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi State, Florida, Ohio State, USC, Texas, if you get those kind of offers, it's a little bit, you've got a real big decision to make of where, and now with NIL, where am I going to place my brand where I can make the most and do the best for me?
Right. Let me address it this way. Let's do a little exercise, kind of based off of what you just said there. So if you're a recruit, let's say you're a 4-star recruit, since everybody loves stars. If you're considering 2 schools, Auburn, and you're considering Illinois, who do you choose? Even with what's going on right now.
I would still take Auburn because of the conference and the prestige of the school.
Okay. So same scenario, Auburn, Virginia.
Oh, well, that one is going to be in Auburn as well. You got to bump the conference up.
I'm getting there. We're just doing a little bit of an exercise right now. Auburn and Oregon.
That's a harder decision to make. And I would, if it was me, I'd base it on playing time and scheme. Who's the coach right now? What position am I playing? But I would say those are they're a lot more even than Illinois and Virginia are in terms of Auburn level.
Yeah, and so you see where we're going. Then we can go to Auburn versus Georgia, Auburn versus LSU even, right now, and they're not even up right now. Yeah. When you get into the scenario of it becomes, who's better, putting the better product out in the field, that's where Auburn is losing right now. Auburn will win time and time again against the bottom and mid-tier programs in terms of perception and recruiting. But winning, as you said, fixes everything.
Yes, it does.
If I'm a 4-star recruit, I wouldn't kill my career at Auburn. I mean, that's fair. I mean, yeah. I understand that, but I hope other people see value for being here other than that. 4- and 5-star players have been evaluated since the 8th grade. Sure. But, that doesn't mean that they're going to turn out to be 4- and 5-star players. Alabama, Georgia, full of 5 stars. They seem to be doing okay. But they're in a system that's been successful for quite some time. And it took them a while to get there. And that's the whole thing, right? It's easy to, you forget that the amount of 3 stars that they're bringing in that have, been able to be masked by some of those other things. So I know that's an offensive thing when I say things like stars don't matter. Everybody gets all in arms. You can just look at some of the comments right now, but it's the facts, folks. You put too much emphasis on stars. And I'm sorry if that makes you upset. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Let's see here. If I'm a 4 or 5-star, I'm heading to Alabama, UGA, Texas, or USC. USC, really interesting. Do you think this USC thing is going to be like legit? Are they back?
I think that they have every opportunity to be back on the West Coast. I don't see them traveling, and right now it looks like they could pretty much consistently beat a Notre Dame because that's a big game for them. I don't see them realistically playing big out of conference games for fear of not being back, because you have a much larger chance to lose to an Ohio State, maybe even a Clemson in their case. Some of those big non-conference, I think they'll avoid them. They'll probably have one, but they have every opportunity to be back on the West Coast. But right now, it does not look like they're going to be able to get in there and bang heads with the big boys year after year. But we'll have to see.
I want to bring this comment up because I know we've had a lot of negative tonight, but we are in a homecoming week, folks. And Devin is getting to go to Auburn for the first time, right, Devin? Or is this the first time in forever? I think this is the first time. So you should be super excited about that. Can I convince you to come, Thomas, to the Plains right now?
Oh, man, if only I was not forced to work that day, it would be a thing. I had to give up a free Penn State ticket for work this past weekend. That was hard.
Well, okay, so it was hard initially. Now you're like, okay, I dodged a bullet there. I will tell you that paying full price for the level of ticket that I was in hurts a little bit after I literally sat there at the end of the game listening to the band play just yards from me, and I'm like, I paid for this. I literally paid for this. It was very similar to the Georgia game last year. I was like, I paid to deal with this. Although the Georgia game last year was a little bit more, tolerable because we knew what we were up against and it was serviceable for a whole half. And this one was kind of there, but anyway. Rob is telling you to come out to the Hayfields, Devin. The Hayfields are a good tailgating spot out there. Lots of action out there. And that's really one of the sad things, Thomas, and we'll start wrapping up our show in just a minute, is how they've pushed people back outside of campus, outside of, setting up your little, having to bring your stuff inside. I remember a day where we used to I told some Penn State fans this week because they were asking, where's all the people on campus, tailgating? I was like, they're here, they're in concentrated areas now because they've tried to do that to keep campus pretty. And it's like, while I value that, I also miss the days where the big old pickup truck just rolled up onto Sanford Lawn and, just went to town with everything. Like, there's something kind of fun about that and crazy about that. And I miss that, but the Hayfields are probably where you want to go. Anything else, Thomas, that you would like to bring up and talk about tonight?
Well, I'll make it very quick, and then I'll bow out for the evening. But it's one game, guys. It looked awful. We just graded it. It was terrible. But pick your head up. Come on, man. You're still an Auburn Tiger, and it's always going to be great to be an Auburn Tiger. So there's still the rest of the season. We talked about it. Right now it doesn't look like we have anything to look forward to. Have a little faith.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there and just drag yourself around and cry about it. We're better fans than that. And the Penn State people that I've seen online have been complimenting the Auburn fans on how nice everybody was, how classy we were. They said they didn't hear a lot of obscenities. There weren't people passed out on the ground drunk like apparently there are in Big Ten country. I don't know. I've never been. But I
don't know that I want to go.
I'm proud of the way that we treated those fans. And I'm sure somebody had a bad experience somewhere. Yeah. Somebody's shoe got stepped on, whatever else. But dadgummit, that's what it is to be an Auburn Tiger and an Auburn fan, and we better keep that up.
Well said, sir. That is excellent. And I think that's a great way to look at this thing. And look, we're not looking for moral victories here, but we do need to acknowledge the things that are good. And tailgating is always an A+. There you go. That was the best grade all night. All nights. So yes, I'm happy how we continue to, as a whole, not always as individuals, have a good reputation. Unless you're Alabama, Georgia, all bets are off then. And LSU, I think that's an exception sometimes too. Even there, sometimes we get good grades on tailgating and treating them, even though they treat us horribly when we go. Everybody gets treated horribly in Baton Rouge. That's another story for another day. My wife literally got punched in the stomach for no reason, just for being an Auburn fan. But I digress. Congrats to you, Auburn fans, for being such good people to the Penn State fans, even despite how awful that game was. Not a fun grading night. Thank you to Thomas for joining me. And I appreciate you for hopping on here to give me some company during a not so fun breakdown and grades of the Auburn versus Penn State game. We'll be back Wednesday night. Be here for the call-in show. Would love to hear from some of you guys. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.